The birth of capitalism, as Karl Marx stated, comes dripping from head to foot, from every pore with blood and dirt. Capital was accumulated through the expropriation of land, the capture of slaves, and the mass murder of native populations, which gave birth to the ideas of race, racism, and white supremacy. The concept of race, as we understand it today, did not exist in ancient or medieval times. Racism is entrenched within capitalism and has continuously been used as a tool to divide the working class. As Malcolm X said, you can't have capitalism without racism. However, there is absolutely nothing innate or natural about race or racism. As Marxists, we understand that the concept of race arose out of the social and economic needs of the ruling class. The ideas of separate hierarchical races was first actually invented to justify the profits of chattel slavery, and secondly, to divide labourers along racial lines. Historically, in the British colonies of the Americas, there was originally no white race. A working-class Marxist historian, Theodore Allen, went through 885 county year records and found that for the first 60 years after the first African slaves arrived in Jamestown, Virginia, there was no concept of a white identity or a white race. In Virginia, during Bacon's Rebellion of 1676, European and African bond labourers united to overthrow their system of slavery and servitude together. In the face of continuous rebellions and the fear of European and African bond labourers uniting again, the state promoted white privilege and the idea of a white race to divide labourers. This is clearly seen with the 1705 Virginia Slave Code, which imposed a series of privileges to Christian whites and restricted them for African bond labourers and free blacks. Racism, however, does not benefit white workers. States like Mississippi, where white supremacy and race segregation are high, have the lowest paid white workers in the entire United States. White supremacist ideas were also internalized by other colonized people, however. In colonial South Africa, petty bourgeois Indians did everything they possibly could to disassociate themselves with the native Zulu population, believing that being seen as black was the cause of their oppression. Mahatma Gandhi even led Indians to support the British in crushing the 1906 Bambatha Rebellion against punitive British taxes and the expropriation of Zulu land. Later in 1913, Indian miners went on strike against similar taxes and repressive measures, and white mine owners used African workers to be Indian strikers to divide workers along racial lines. Yet historically, when workers from different backgrounds have united and struggled on a class basis, it has proved the best tool to fight racism. The Grunwick strike in London in the mid-1970s saw predominantly female, Indian and Caribbean migrant workers striking with the support of white miners at a time when dock workers had marched with a racist MP, Enoch Powell. Although the strike failed, it showed white workers who the real enemy was. As Marxists, we would point out that racial liberation won't be won by quotas or with black and brown people in high office. When the first black president of the United States bombed an African country, multiple Middle Eastern countries, and remained passive when racial minorities were being deported and incarcerated on his watch, Barack Obama showed that racism cannot be fought by capitalism. Capital and race were born together. History repeatedly shows how capitalism reproduces racist ideas to divide the working class. Only when people unite together to overthrow capitalism on an internationalist class basis can we begin to see the embers of a world without racism.